Hello and welcome to today's episode of the After Chapter. I will be talking to the brilliant Irish author Anne Griffin, who is, of course, the author of the wonderful book When All Is Said. And I will just invite Anne to join me now. So if you have any questions for Anne, feel free to either write them in the comment section or send us the question via this box down here that you have. It seems that we're having a few difficulties. I will try inviting Anne again. Okay, Anne, I sent you a request. I can see that you joined us. So while we're waiting for Anne, let me tell you that this is Anne's debut novel, and her next novel is coming out actually the day after tomorrow, on Thursday. So let me just see. And if you can see the request, just press accept. Okay, I think there's some difficulties. Hi, Tanya. Okay. And if you can't accept my request, can I please ask you to maybe scroll up and try to press the button for request to join? I think there's a slight technical issue. Hi, Anne.
Hello, I'm
Okay.
here at last. That took a while. I was nearly going to run from my son and say, help me, I can't get on Instagram, but here we are.
Here we are. Hi, thank you so much for joining me today. How are
Oh,
you?
I'm great. I'm great, and I'm delighted to be chatting to you. So kind of you to get in touch and to ask me to come along. And
Thank you so much for accepting my request. I'm
brilliant.
very grateful that you took the time because I know you're very busy. You have a new book coming out in 2 days, so
Two
it's an
days, yeah.
exciting time.
Very exciting, very nerve-wracking as well, But
Yeah.
yeah, 2 days, and finally got my hands on the book yesterday. So it's really nice. Actually, do I have a Oh, I'll just show you. I mean, I know I'm
Yeah,
supposed to
yeah,
talk
show
about
it,
when
show
all
it.
I said, but this is the new one. It's called Listening Still,
Listening still, yeah.
and so it's out in 2 days. So it's. I have a lovely pile of them right here beside me.
Wonderful. So how is it for you right now, actually, this time? Is it difficult? Are you ever nervous about
Yeah.
people reading your book for the first
Oh,
time?
all the time. I mean, that's a given. Yeah, no, all the time. And I think with a second novel, where particularly in Ireland, this book, well, When All Is Said was very, very successful. And so when you have your second book coming, you're very nervous about, how that's going to be received. Are people just waiting to kind of go, oh yeah, yeah, it wasn't as good as the first one,
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, naturally I'm very, very nervous about it. But luckily it got two really nice reviews in our papers at the weekend,
Mm-hmm.
so that's really good. But yeah, I think there's always a nervousness with any book coming out, but particularly a second book. And in writing the second book, because I was so busy with When All Is Said, it was quite hard dividing my time between writing the second book and promoting When All Is Said. So it was a bumpier road, I think,
Yeah, yeah.
than the first one, because as people say, with your first one, you've all the time in the world to write that one, but then with your second one,
It's
the
like a
public,
baby, right?
yeah, exactly. You're on a time scale,
Yeah.
and it's going to happen. So there's nothing you can do. You just got to get to the finish line with the book. So, yeah, there's a huge amount of nervousness. I think with the first one, it's your debut novel and you're just so excited and you're thinking, I just can't wait to see it on a bookshelf.
Mm-hmm.
But with your second one, there's all sorts of other expectations that you put on yourself,
Yes.
and yes, you know, there are people watching now to see, how is this one going to go? But I think your main pressure comes from yourself,
Yeah. We are
and
our worst critics usually.
aren't we? Aren't
Yeah, it's
we?
horrible.
So, yeah.
Okay, and so I'm
So,
just going to dive right in. I will first ask you, you once worked for Waterstones in London and Dublin. What did you
that's
do,
right.
and how did you get into the bookselling trade? You'd studied history after all.
Yes, that's right. So I actually got into book selling, not because I was a wannabe writer or anything, but I was a historian, and I loved nonfiction was my thing. So I got a job there, and I eventually became a nonfiction buyer. So I was, in Waterstones, I'm not sure how it works now, but if you were assigned a section, you were able, as the bookseller, to buy the books for that section, which was really, really nice. I'm not so sure if it's done anymore. So that's what I did. But while I was there, the fiction buyers just kept putting good fiction in front of me and saying, read this, read this. And so I just, I wasn't an amazing reader before I went in there, but I became an avid reader once I got in, so
You kind of can't do otherwise, I think, if you're working there.
I think so. Yeah, exactly. And when you keep getting handed great authors like Carol Shields, or, Ann Tyler, or, Richard Russo, it's just such a wonderful world to get lost in, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Great storytelling. There's nothing like it. And so I became an addict. I became a fiction addict. So I worked for Waterstones Booksellers for 8 years, predominantly in Dublin. There were two branches in Dublin, but I was in London for a while as well. I was in Covent Garden, and the Croydon branch. And Covent Garden was the much more elegant branch, and it was such a great part of London to work in. I really, really enjoyed it, and a great team there. So yeah, so I got into it straight from college. I had just qualified with my degree. I just hadn't a clue what I was doing with my life, really. And what better place to go to than a bookshop, just to meet.
Absolutely.
Because one of the things, I'll never ever forget about working in bookselling was I met writers, people who were in there working, but their aspiration was to be a writer. And I just found that so inspirational. And some of these people would be up at 5 o'clock in the morning getting 2 hours work done before they had to go into the job. There was I admired their dedication so much.
And such a drive.
Absolutely. It was just inspirational to me. And I loved the fact that they were so clear about what they wanted in life. They knew exactly what they wanted. They knew that it was going to be blood, sweat, and tears for this, and they were willing to do it. And so they were just amazing people, and that inspiration I felt around them kind of remained with me all my life. Not that at the time I was ever thinking I would be a writer myself. You
You never
know,
had those aspirations?
no, I
Not even
wasn't one.
nonfiction wise, since you were
No,
a fan? No?
no, I wasn't one of those writers who, from the moment they came out of the womb, knew that they wanted to be a writer. My desire to be a writer came when I was 44, so many years after working in Waterstones. I had gone on to work with many charities in Ireland,
Mm-hmm.
and I was about 20 years with them. And then I kind of hit a crossroads in 2013. I was 44 at the time, and I was chatting to John Boyne, who's one of my best friends, who I met in Waterstones. Sorry, I have to change how I'm sitting. So okay, that's a bit more comfortable. And we were chatting on the phone one day, and I was telling him about how I wasn't so happy in my work anymore, and he said, "Right, why don't you write?" Because he said, you've been reading great fiction all your life. So well, not all my life, since he met me in Waterstones, and we pour over the most amazing works of fiction and just have hours chatting about writing. And he was like, well, why don't you just go do that? And what he was saying was, look, don't go off and, necessarily become a writer, but just use it as a way of working through whatever it is going on for you at the minute. And I think neither of us thought this was going to lead to an actual career in writing.
Yeah.
And yeah, but
But
within,
what did make you then sort of pursue a
yeah,
postgraduate diploma in community youth
yeah.
work? What drove you to
Uh,
that?
so after Waterstones, doing that, what it was that, I felt that I'd gone into Waterstones not quite knowing what I wanted to do with my life. And I had during my time in Waterstones in Dublin had started to work voluntarily for the Rape Crisis Centre, on the phone lines at night. And I think that working within that world, and giving my time to that world of charity work, I just felt, you know what, maybe this is what I should be doing. Maybe this is the direction I should be taking, because I felt such value in that work, and I felt I was getting so much out of that work that, well, obviously this is where I should be going. And I chose community development, and I liked community development because it was about the building of voices within groups whose voice was not that strong for whatever
Mm-hmm.
reason, be it, whatever marginalization they were facing. So the whole idea of being a community development worker was that you were going in to assist in the building of that voice. And so I really liked that empowerment. And so that's why I decided to go back to college and do that, and to study to become a community development worker. And I did that for about 5 years, and I worked with many marginalised groups. I worked with asylum seekers. I worked with the Irish traveller community here in Ireland, and faces huge marginalisation here and huge discrimination. And I worked with women, a group of women who were going back to college. Most of them hadn't even finished school, but they were going back to college to do their own studies around equality. And all of the people that I worked with just almost on a daily basis took my breath away. What they achieved in conditions that really set to work against them. They were really, really amazing. And so I did that. I did that for about 5 years, but then I found I was bringing a lot of issues home. I suppose I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
coping very well with a lot of the stories that I was hearing, or just watching people go through such difficulties in their life. I found it quite affecting. And what I did was I kind of went into the back room, and I started to work within the financial end of things, and
Mm-hmm.
in doing a lot of work around funding applications and in the financial management. And that's what I specialized in then for about the next 15 years within the sector. But I think it was actually that honing my life down into just a financial area,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't, it was kind of limiting me. I felt that the crossroads I hit was that I think it had chipped away a bit of me, and I still didn't know what that bit of me was, but
Yeah.
I knew that this wasn't working for me necessarily. And that was how the conversation with John started about, I need to change, but I don't know where it is I need to be going, and that's when he did this. He said, just write through this, right, try and figure out where it is you're
Yeah.
supposed to be through creativity. And
And you started with the short stories, actually.
yes, well, actually,
Ah,
the very first thing, yes, the very first thing I wrote was a novel. And not this,
really?
not when all is said. It was, I call it my homework novel. Well, I was just, yeah, you see, I didn't really know how it all worked. I didn't know that most people kind of start on short stories and that, but I wanted to see, could I actually, did I have the ability to keep going at something for about 70,000 words? Because that's what I decided. If I hit 70,000 words, that's the least amount of words you need for a full-blown novel. Let's see if I can get there. And I did that, and I wrote a book, and it was like, as I say, my homework, just to see, could I do it? Had I got the stamina to do it? Had I got the dedication to do it? And it was just a test for me, really. So I did it. The book was, I wasn't going to be showing it to anybody. This was just for me to see that. And then, because in writing that, I was getting interested in, well, how do people start off in writing? And then I realized, really, the way to do this is start to write short stories, because that's where you can hone your craft very, very well, in this short
Format.
piece. Yes. So I did that. And the very first short story I wrote, I got shortlisted for the Hennessy Award over here in Ireland. And, I thought, well, this means I'm a genius, obviously.
Obviously.
My first show, obviously. And so I thought everything I was going to write was going to be just amazing, and I was going to get shortlisted for every award there was, and which of course did not happen, because that's not how it works. But obviously I was really enjoying the short story format, but I still felt, I think my real love would actually be for a novel in the longer format. So within a year or so, I started looking around for an idea for a novel. And that was that was around 2014, I think, that I started to consider, let's try writing a second book, and let this not be homework. Let this actually be
The real thing.
The real thing. And let's see how I can do with this,
So the book, can you tell us a little bit about When All Is Said, how you would describe it in a few words?
When All Is Said is the story of 84-year-old Maurice Hannigan, an Irish farmer, who sits to the bar of his local hotel to drink 5 toasts to the 5 most important people in his life. And over those 5 drinks and over those 5 hours, we learn just who Maurice Hannigan is, and what his life has been, and what is going to happen at the end of this evening.
So I do know actually the story behind this wonderful Maurice. And could you explain it to the readers, actually, those that don't know what happened, where the idea came from?
Where the idea came from, yeah. So, it was 2014, and I was on holidays in the west of Ireland, on a cycling path, Greenway, that brings you from Westport Village, which is the most beautiful, picturesque village in Ireland, over to Achill Island. And halfway through that journey, we stopped in a village called Newport, and there in the bar of the hotel that we went into to get some food was a man standing there, a very tall man, and he was in his 70s, and he had this big, massive white head of hair. It was amazing looking. I think that's what I was drawn to. But he was the only guy in the place. So, and naturally enough in Ireland, you're going to get talking. Everybody talks to each other here in Ireland. And in the course of this very short conversation that we kind of all had together, he said 2 things. And the first was, I used to work here when I was a boy. And immediately my creative writing brain goes, oh, I like this. I like the fact that here is this man still at this age. Why is he still here? Has he come full circle? What has happened in his life? So I'm automatically starting this in my head. And then I don't know what, the conversation was drawing to a close. Another couple was coming in. There was distraction going on. Anyway, and he started to move away. But before he did, he said to me, but do you know, I'm not going to see the morning. And he was gone. And that was a huge sentence for anybody to say.
Yeah.
And I was quite shocked by it, and he was gone before I could pull him back and kind of say, okay, what's going on here? But his words stayed with me. Oh, I should say, I have done a book festival over that part of the world since, and I've and some people came up after and said, "Don't worry, we know exactly who that man is, and he's still drinking pints at that bar, so nothing
Oh,
terrible
God.
has
Very
happened
good.
to him." Uh, but exactly. Um, but so the next, I was cycling the final bit of the journey over to Achill Island, and I knew this man had gifted me the idea of a story that would surround this being at a very significant, in a very significant building, at a bar that is very significant in his life, and that it is also on a very significant night of his life. And I liked the idea of telling his story through him raising toasts, to him having a drink for each person um, that he wants to think about. So this would be the method in which I would do it. And I liked that there would be this very clear 5-stage structure, because as a debut author, as somebody who was still learning how to do this writing thing, that structure fit very nicely into my stage of writing. And I was very affected and loved Donal Ryan's Spinning Heart. And I don't know if anybody out there has read it, but what I love about it is that it had 21 different voices. So I liked this thing of having this very specific scaffolding to my book as such. And I didn't know, as I went through the masters in UCD, where I brought a draft of this book in order to workshop it through. There were times when I remember once somebody suggesting, "Do you need the structure of the 5 toasts?" And indeed, at the beginning, when I had thought about this structure, I suppose it did occur to me, that's how I'm going to write it. Whether that structure stays, I'm not sure, but that's how I'm definitely, as a new writer, going to be able to get myself through this story. But by the time that colleague asked me in that room, do you think you need the 5 toasts? I knew they were staying, because I'd fallen in love with that, and because I really liked how it kind of, the momentum was kept through this toast and now the next toast, and we've moved on now another half an hour, and so the momentum was building in the book. So I kept the 5 toasts.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how the book started. And as I say, I kind of came home from holiday and I started on the book almost immediately, and within a year I had a draft ready, and had decided to apply to do the Masters in Creative Writing in UCD, and it was the best thing I ever did, the most frightening thing I ever did as well. But it was honestly really, really good. And I workshopped as many scenes from that book as I possibly could with my colleagues and with the tutors. And by the time I finished, I came out with a draft that I knew was ready to be sent around to agents and publishers, and that, looking for somebody to get interested.
Someone has commented that they're really looking forward to listening still.
Yes.
And When All Is Said definitely goes down as one of my favorite books.
Wow.
I've spent many days with Maurice in the bar of Rainford House Hotel, as we have all. I was wondering, Maurice actually chooses 5 people.
Yes.
To raise a toast to, but they weren't the only ones who truly influenced his life.
No.
So who would you say was the one that actually influenced it the most, if you can say anything without too many spoilers?
I think it has to be his wife. I think it has to be Sadie, and there is a reason why she was given the best whiskey for her toast. And there is a reason why she was kept to last, because he says it himself, "I have kept the best to last." I think she softened Morris's edges. She was able to reach him, and he just adored her. And yes, they had their differences. They were very different people. And yes, they rubbed each other up the wrong way. And yes, he wouldn't buy her a cup of tea when they were out having dinner somewhere, but, you know, at the end, but that is what relationships are.
Yeah.
They're full of, they're full of possibly more moments of you rubbing up against each other in the wrong way than in the right way.
Yeah. Happens both ways.
So, so she just allowed him settle into who he was, although he still couldn't tell her and never did tell her that he was dyslexic.
Yeah.
Which, so he still held a lot back, but she was the person who reached him most and, got him, as I say, to relax as much into himself, and to see that there was love and beauty in the world. So yes, I
I
think
really like
Sadie.
that he sort of made quite a lot of seemingly tiny decisions or steps, but they turned out to be somehow life altering in the end. Like actually the way life usually happens for all of us. Let's be very honest.
Yes. Yeah.
There's something terribly fascinating about those small choices that sort of spin your entire life in the other direction. How did
Yes.
that come to you?
Um, I suppose, and in answering this, I'm particularly thinking about the stealing of the coin,
Mm-hmm.
and his just decision to steal this
Let's
coin.
not say too much if
We won't
anyone's
say too much,
watching. Yeah,
but but this coin is a really interesting one, and I loved its appearances in and out of the novel, the way
yeah.
it kind of weaved its way through the novel. But that momentary decision that I am going to take that, um, was, lived with him for the rest of his life, and
Opened up a
um,
vortex of something.
exactly.
Yeah,
And so I just enjoyed doing that because that is life, as you say. It is, that is who we humans are. These things happen to us, and suddenly, we've turned this corner when we should have been turning that corner. And I think that is what is great. As a reader, I love that. I love seeing how life's small little incidental things can change us completely, um, and can send us down a road that we perhaps hadn't expected. Like, for example, if Morris hadn't gone to the bank that day to lodge his money, he may never have met Sadie. Sadie may have managed to get her transfer further up the country back home. You know, and what I wanted to show in the character of Morris was life's vulnerabilities. I
mm-hmm.
wanted to show, um, I wanted to show our flawedness, in being human beings. That, we are full of inconsistencies. We are full of making wrong choices. We are just so flawed. And I wanted to really build this into this man, into this character, because that is what I like to read in books, is how, there's no getting around it. We, as human beings, and the things we do wrong, and the wrong roads we go down, it is intriguing. It is intriguing watching how we act as human beings. Um, One of my favorite writers is Richard Russo, and his character, Donald Sullivan, and Nobody's Fool, gets things wrong all of the time.
All the time. Yes.
All the time. And says dreadful things and hilarious things. And sometimes it doesn't mean to be hilarious, but, and I wanted to show this in a character. I wanted to show, how we're just, I don't know, we're just so vulnerable and flawed and, crap,
Yeah.
sometimes. But that is what I fall in love with in characters and in human beings. And so it was just deeply important that that's what who I wanted this man to be. I wanted this man to show his life, warts and all, to the world, and for that world still to love him.
Yeah.
You know.
I also really liked, all of the characters were very human. They had a lot of flaws, a lot of flaws. They were
Yeah.
impatient, they were
Yeah.
selfish.
Oh
They
yeah.
didn't think things through. They said mean things.
Yes.
And at one point, I realized I was actually upset with everyone except for one person in the novel. Um,
Really?
yeah, but
Who were you not upset with?
I can't tell you right now. I'll tell you later. Um, but I felt that that was actually what made this entire book so magnificent, because I still cared for them.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, no, that okay, very good. Wow.
Yeah, very
That's a
well
real
done.
compliment. That's a real
Yeah,
compliment. Thank you. Thank you. That's yeah. Yeah, and that's it. It's like, you have to show human beings, warts and all, but you still want people to be on Morris's side.
yeah,
So I deliberately built this cantankerous man, and this man who, you know, um, wasn't, was rough with people and could be gruff with people and just could be downright rude with people. But you saw why. In his story, he explains why.
yeah.
And he's, and I think, no, I'm about to, if I say
No,
this
don't
next
say it.
sentence, I'm giving away something. So I will
Don't
not give
say it.
that away. No, so I'm stepping away from it. But that is brilliant. That's exactly what I wanted, because, for me as a reader, I want to be on the side of the character. I don't necessarily have to love them, but I'm rooting for them. I have to be
Yeah,
drawn to them. I have to feel like I am holding my breath,
yeah.
wondering, what's about to happen, and is this really going to happen? Oh my God, and what's he going to do? Oh, please make sure he's going to be
Don't
okay.
do that. Don't
Um,
do that.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And very often I was writing things Morris would say. I'd be like, "Oh, that's just horrible. I can't believe he's saying this." But I'd leave it in because, because we are horrible sometimes in
Yeah,
life, and it has to go in.
yeah.
But luckily, most people did like him. You know, most people. on,
Most
on
people.
the whole, most people liked him.
Most people. But what I
And
also really liked was
yeah,
that, he was, all of his flaws, if we're speaking directly about him, he had these troubles where you could see why he struggled, and you were still, like you said, rooting for him.
yes,
Come on, you can do it. You can do it. And then when he
yes,
didn't, you still
yeah,
understood why he didn't. It was
yeah.
infuriating.
Well, yeah, it was infuriating. Yeah, because as a reader, um, you have such investment in the
Yeah.
story, and you're like, no, I would not have done that. I really would not have done that. Why are you doing that? Um, and to this day, I read other people's books and I do that exact thing. I'm like, oh my God, why is the writer made him do that? And then you realize, because that's just what it is.
Yeah.
We get things wrong all the time, or we're just different people, and different people feel different things about different things, and there's nothing you can
And
do about
react
it. People,
differently. Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I enjoyed. I loved writing him. I have to say, I really really enjoyed writing the character.
Did you know what kind of relationships will happen inside all of these five toasts, or was it something that perhaps even surprised you during the course of writing?
Yeah, I mean, not all the five toasts. When I started writing the book, not all the five toasts were there clearly in my head that these are the five people and this is what I was going to have. Because the kind of writer I am is I don't plan everything out necessarily. I mean, the fact that I had a five toast structure was extremely impressive, because normally I just start to write and I see where I get. Um, so yeah, I was digging deeper and deeper and finding out more and more about the book. For example, the coin and its repercussions throughout Morris's life. That came whilst I was writing the book. I hadn't thought about that beforehand at all. And so yes, each of these characters kind of grew, And in fact, Molly, his daughter, who's stillborn, she was a very late addition. She was one of the last ones that I put in. And at one stage, I wasn't sure whether I might allow a toast for Emily. But then I drew back on that because I thought, no, one of the things that Morris says and that I really liked and wanted to stick with was about the importance of blood and actual relation, having, that
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
whoever he raised the toast to, for him, it needed to be a blood relation. That was very, very
Mm-hmm.
important.
Mm-hmm.
But I obviously allowed her be an important character throughout the story for him.
Yeah.
So they came gradually, and their importance was definitely sculpted and shaped a bit to obviously to sit within the story of the book. But
But what is your
yeah,
writing routine otherwise like? I know that you said
uh,
that writing is rewriting for you.
oh, totally, totally. Yeah, it's like, get the first draft down and get it right later. And I'm
Just
a
get the work done
complete
first.
exactly. And I'm so
Mm-hmm.
impatient as well. I'm like, oh my God, I have to get to the end of this first draft. Please let me get to the end of the first draft, and then everything will be perfect. Because I'll spend all that time luxuriating in the craft of editing and getting it just perfect. Whereas that's also excruciating. But yeah, so I really like to get a draft down, the brush stroke of the novel, really, and then go back and put depth and layers into the storylines,
Mm-hmm.
because some of those storylines might be quite thin. They
Mm-hmm.
haven't. There's like a vague idea there, but I know that no, I have to actually dig deeper into that and make sure I, as the writer, know exactly where I am going with this and what I want to achieve with this particular scene or this particular character. So yes, absolutely. I'm, big into editing, big into making sure that I have people that I can send drafts to who'll read, who'll come back and give me great feedback. I had in bringing the draft of that novel into the MA, I had 12 colleagues sitting around giving me their feedback. I mean, I was just,
Wow.
I know I was so lucky, and they were fantastic. Each and every one of them were fantastic, and then I had tutors such as Frank McGuinness and Anne Enright and Eilish Le Guivna, trying to help in the guiding of where I was going with the book. So, I mean, really, if anybody out there is thinking of going for an MA, make sure you have a draft of your novel going in there, and just make everybody give you, their feedback, because it's golden.
Mm-hmm.
It was brilliant.
So tell me, what exactly is it that you liked the most about the novel? What was the most wonderful thing for
Okay.
you to write?
It was
Again,
Morris's
with not
voice.
too many spoilers.
Not give it to. Okay, so the main thing was Morris's voice. I embodied that voice immediately, and I think that was helped from the image of from talking to that man. Not that when I picture Morris, I don't picture that man, but
Mm-hmm.
it was just from that moment, from from those few moments with him, from my own father, who was 84 at the time, and so listening to him, I just had Morris Hannigan's voice in my head from the very beginning, and I just fell in love with the man. So I enjoyed putting Morris in situations like, for example, the restaurant he visits in the States, putting
Mm-hmm.
Morris in situations where he just didn't want to be, but having
Yeah.
fun with him. So I really, really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the voice of Morris Hannigan so much. And I cried the day that I heard Niall Buggy, who's just a fantastic Irish actor, did the voice for the audiobook. And I cried the day I heard him, the recording I heard, because it was like, you've nailed that voice. That
Yeah.
was the voice in my
Wow.
head. So Morris Morris was it for me. And there was one point in which I was in the middle of trying to get an agent interested in the book, or a publisher, anybody. I was trying to sell the book, and I wasn't getting anywhere. And I got very down, because I thought, oh, people won't get to know Morris Hannigan, because I loved him so much. I fallen in love with him so much. And I wasn't so much mourning that I'm not going to get a book deal. It was like, oh, people aren't actually going to
People
hear
should
this
know
man's
about
voice. Him. Yeah, because I loved doing it. And I loved looking at, the issue of loneliness and what that can do to a person, as well. So.
Yeah. If I asked you who you would raise a toast to if you had to choose 5 people, is that too personal? Do you know the list?
No, it's just I'm so crap at this. I know I've been asked this before. I think there, this is going to be fairly boring, because it's going to be very obvious people, but it will be to my parents, who are still alive and kicking in Dublin, and who I luckily get to see every week, which is just wonderful. To my husband and son, who literally have put up with a crazy woman for the last 5 or so years since I got into this writing game. Like, my husband keeps saying, I thought you were going to be really happy when you started to write. You told me this was the best thing that ever happened to you. Why aren't you happy? So for their patience, I'd be raising a toast to them for their patience. I think to John Boyne, because he is the man who got me onto this road, and who has been like a rock in the last couple of years for me. He's just such a great friend, and is full of such wisdom around writing. And then, that's only 3 toasts, so I've got 2 more to go. I think I would definitely raise a toast to all of those people that just, when I worked within community development, like I say, kind of inspired me every day. And I can think of 2 or 3 of them are bopping around in my head here. Young people. It was a 17-year-old asylum seeker who just was the most positive person I have ever met in my life, and whose application ended up getting turned down here in Ireland, which was very, very sad. So I'd raise a toast to them, to those people who've tried to struggle to find their voice in society, and in Irish society. And lastly, I would raise a toast to the readers, because the confidence readers have filled me with is just beyond words. I never, in my wildest dreams, thought I'd be here having a book that has touched the world in the way that it has. And so I'm full of thanks and gratitude to
Wonderful. Anna has just sent a question. Let me just check. Okay, she's asking if you have a routine of how many hours you write per day, or how many words you write per day, something like that.
I don't do words, no. Of course, I do have an aspiration, but I don't put it like I must get to there, or I can't stop writing. I write generally Monday through Friday. If I'm not too busy. If I am busy, I will go into the weekend, but I try to keep the weekend for family. So I write Monday through Friday, and my best creative hours are between 9 and 1. And then I get ravenously hungry and I have to stop.
That's a good schedule.
I do. And then in the afternoon, I do come back to working. It depends what I have going on, but I will be writing in some way or shape. It might be a little bit of editing. But they are the hours that I have really where I know I am at my best. Yes. If I have to write outside of those hours, I do, but I know that my best hours are then. So, that's
very
how
good.
I do it.
Okay, so can you tell me a little bit more about the book that is coming out on Thursday? It also has a very interesting premise. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
So this is the story. Yeah, so Listening Still is the story of Jeannie Masterson, who is an undertaker in a small Midlands town here in Ireland, and she has a gift, and Jeannie can hear the dead, but only for this very, very brief moment of time when they're in the funeral home. And they are there to request or to get Jeannie's assistance, really, in helping them with something that has been unresolved, that they have died without something being fixed or expressed, or and they are there to ask Jeannie to help them. And so it kind of plays with that idea, what we're willing to say to other people and what we hold back. A bit like what happened with Morris, what he held back.
A bit, yeah.
I suppose. Yeah. And we meet Jeannie at a moment when her father has told her that he is retiring. And this throws Jeannie completely, because her father has been the only other person in Ireland who has this gift. And so they have a real bond, the pair of them. And she has always struggled with this role she has, because she finds it because very often what these people want to say are not just expressions of eternal love, like to those left behind. They're very, very difficult things. And she's always really struggled with having this role. And so with him going, she is fearful of, well, can I do this anymore? And so we meet her at a point of real turmoil. And the book it goes through, we watch her figure her way throughout, and all the time the dead are assisting and helping her as much as she is helping them in many ways. So
wow, sounds so fascinating. I really can't wait to read it. But tell me, are you working on anything new right now? Because usually this entire, writer's process, by the time you finish the book and you start, promoting it, you're already working on something else.
Yes, indeed I am. Yes, so book three is in train, and I have that very thin first draft completed. And
ooh,
so but it is a very thin first draft. Let's not get really excited.
It's a start.
And so yeah, I'm going to take a bit of time after the promotion for Listening Still is over. I'm going to get back into it then. And so it's a nice little break for me doing the promotion with Listening Still. So I've got 2 or 3 weeks where I'll be doing that, and then I'll get back into it. So
it probably helps to come back with like a fresher mind, right?
Oh yeah, it's lovely. I mean, I think it is very important when you finish the first draft that you give yourself a bit of a break, turn your attention to something else. And it just so happened, timing wise, that I got to the end of the draft just as Listening Still was coming out. My timing was perfect this time. Perfect. So it certainly didn't work that way the last time. So yeah, I'm dying to get back to the writing again, but also enjoying. It feels like my holidays at the minute. Promoting the Listening Still. It feels like I'm on holidays, and I get loads of time in the garden and loads of time in the polytunnel as well. So
which isn't bad at all.
I love it. I love it. I'm a little bit addicted to the polytunnel at the minute. I find myself in there at all sorts of times in the day, kind of just talking to my carrots. It's great.
They probably are very good listeners.
They're the best. They are, definitely. Recommended highly.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. It was really wonderful to chat with you. And thank you for making me cry like a fountain at your book.
Great.
Truly like a fountain. But seriously, thank you so much for taking the time. And I can't wait to read your newest novel and to hopefully then talk to you about that as well.
Oh, brilliant. Well, thank you so much for the invitation. This has been just lovely.
Thank you. And have a wonderful evening, and talk to you soon.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Okay, bye.
Bye.